Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to Season 4 of the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 4, Episode 1, Way of the Warrior. This episode aired October 2nd, 1995.
Wow, we've made it all the way to Season 4.
Yes, we have. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about the last podcast, which was the Season 3 wrap-up?
No, it was perfect.
Yeah, we had a lot to say. I'm surprised how long that episode was.
It was a lot of fun.
Still editing.
It's great going back and revisiting the highs and lows of a season you enjoyed.
Yeah, it was good to do that because I needed to see the highs. I needed to be reminded of the positives because the negatives were hanging on my mind.
Yes, that was a very good idea.
So we're going to do this episode a little bit different. It is a 2-hour episode with commercials, but without commercials, it's still quite long, about 90 minutes. And we decided we're going to split it into 2 parts so that we would keep our podcast episodes under an hour. So we're just going to do the first half, at least where we consider kind of a natural breaking point in the episode. And then we'll finish the rest of it in the next episode.
So the first break is at 42 minutes and 50 seconds. And then we will continue with the rest of the episode in next week's podcast.
Yes. Okay. You ready?
Well, I'm actually joined in the podcast booth today by Pookie the cat.
Yes, I saw her on camera. Will she be on the microphone as well?
There may be instances where she is on the microphone.
All right. Cats like to be a part of everything.
Oh, yes, they do.
All right, well, let's get started on this very long episode with lots of action.
Before we start, one final thing is, just to reiterate to you, Cam, as everybody says, oh, this is where the show starts getting really good.
Yeah, well, let's see.
How many times have people said that to you?
Oh, my God. 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
I'll reserve my judgment. See if I agree.
Yeah, I'm not a very unbiased judge of that.
No, nobody is when it comes to things like this. Well, in the cold open, the episode opens with very dramatic music and the team sweeping the station for a changeling.
Oh, yeah. Kira and Sisko are carrying phasers and walking down the corridors with some intention.
Yeah, and they see it ooze out of a chair and turn into a bird and fly away, and then everyone descends on the promenade. When Odo comes out of the wall and taps Julian on the shoulder, and then the simulation ends in relative failure. Odo says the 3 hours and 27 minutes it took to find him is too slow, and if one of his people is loose for that long on the station, they will do a lot of damage.
Yeah, he's quite disappointed at how slow they were.
Yeah, and he reminds him that the Founders are way better shapeshifters than he is, so it would probably be even harder if it was one of them.
Right.
Sisko tells Kira to schedule another drill. He wants to be ready if the Dominion infiltrates the station. Quark appears, of course, complaining that they keep scaring away his customers with these drills. And he also tells Odo that they could work together to profit from the drills. And then we get Odo's first scoff of Season 4.
It's great that we got the season scoff in.
Yeah.
In under 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And Quark is wearing a very colorful outfit this season.
Yeah, he's very pink in this episode.
Yeah.
It's important to note as we end this scene that Sisko has shaved his head now to go with his goatee. And he looks pretty good.
Oh, he looks 100% the captain in this one.
Yeah, the trouble here, though, is that Kira's hair is a total mess. It's way too long. It's kind of unkempt.
Yeah.
It's like they were trying to make it slightly longer and what would maybe have been considered more feminine at that time. But it's not good. Also, Miles' hair is fuzzy and way too long. I mean, come on, 90s. Sisko's figured it out. Everybody else looks terrible.
I would agree with that assessment. Although, before we leave this scene, I gotta say, if you're in a fight situation, I definitely want to be the one paired up with Kira.
Oh, yeah.
Or Shakar. Either of those two would be pretty good, but in this situation, definitely Kira.
Well, there's a fight scene later in this episode, and we'll talk about who's left standing.
I'm just picturing, they're making the selections. I'd be the one going, can I be with Kira, please? Can I be with the Freedom Fighter?
Yeah, it's a good choice. Well, now we go to Sisko's quarters where he's got this great look going for him above the neck, but he's wearing one of the ugliest outfits I've seen in a long time. It's like they took a couple of ponchos from the 70s and they turned it into this.
Yes, and it's like they had random colors left over.
It is bad. He's got a long tan and brown printed vest over a purple and white striped shirt.
Yeah.
And it's truly ugly. I was wondering, did he wear this before? Because I remember in Explorers, he wasn't wearing a uniform and he had a few different outfits on, but I don't know. This one is pretty bad. But his dinner date in this scene, Cassidy Yates, she comes in wearing a stunning aqua-colored off-the-shoulder outfit. I mean, she looks amazing. She also comments that she likes Sisko's shaved head. She should have said, but dude, this outfit has got to go.
Oh, that would have been perfect.
That would have been funny.
I think for fun, they should have had Cassidy come in wearing like overalls and oil on her face and look like a freighter captain.
Yeah, they do not play up the freighter captain at all. She's not very rugged looking.
Yeah.
But she could be. That would be fine. That would make sense. Yeah, if she were like a mechanic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, kind of a tough guy. Yeah, that would be good. I would approve of that. Well, they exchange gifts, and he gives her some Tholian silk, which she loves, and she gives him a baseball cap from her brother's baseball team. He wants to go see a real game, even though it's like 8 weeks away at maximum warp.
I feel if you were deprived of baseball, you would look at that in a similar way.
Yeah, probably. Although 8 weeks at maximum warp is a long time. I mean, you can just go in the holosuite and watch them too.
That's true, but the holosuite isn't like the real thing.
I don't know. I find that if I'm actually watching baseball, I think I get more out of it watching it on TV. It's true of most sports, I think. When you're actually there, you can't see everything.
Yeah, you can't see all the angles.
Yeah. But then you also miss the atmosphere. Although I do think I get more out of tennis matches in person, but baseball games are a little bit different. She asks about all the maintenance crews in the docking ring, but he says they're just doing some retrofitting. They're preparing a few surprises in case the Dominion comes through the wormhole. She comments that the Cardassians have sealed their borders, and then they agree to stop talking about this stuff, the serious stuff anyway, and start their date. I think they're just trying to inform us here of the current situation, do a little exposition at the beginning of the season, but also let you know that Sisko now has a girlfriend.
Aw, that's nice. He seems quite happy.
He does, but the date is immediately interrupted by Dax, who summons Sisko to ops. The new Klingon flagship, the Negvar, has decloaked off the station, and General Martok calls with greetings from the Klingon Empire. His men require shore leave, and Sisko invites them to come on board. But he wasn't quite expecting the volume of Klingon ships that start decloaking all around the station. Seems like maybe Martok could have mentioned that. Oh, I have got like 50 other ships here.
Oh, yeah, I like that. All of a sudden, these Klingon ships start decloaking, and I think I counted 14 of them just in that one opening scene.
Yeah, it happened really fast. And then we cue the theme song dramatically here as well.
With Sisko and Dax both giving each other this, uh-oh, look.
Yeah, I think it's probably bad enough when you just have one ship of Klingons on the station.
Yeah.
But now you're going to have, I don't know how many.
Yeah, at least 14.
I noticed immediately that the theme is different. It's like a little faster and higher pitched, maybe less dramatic and dark. Also, the original opening credits were mostly static shots of the station, whereas now we see the Defiant and also people working on the outside of the station. The images are cooler, but the song is a little weird now. Like they tried to cheer it up a bit, but not quite. Did you know that?
I noticed it, but I didn't really register it.
Oh, I did a full deep dive. I went back onto YouTube and I was playing it alongside on the television with the current one, and I was listening for the differences.
Oh, funny.
Because I wasn't sure that it was different or if I had imagined it.
Yeah.
But I did not imagine it. It's definitely different. And then also the images were different.
Yeah, I remember the Defiant becoming part of the opening credits.
Well, and also you notice Michael Dorn is part of the credits right away.
Oh, yeah. A little bit of a giveaway. I admit that when I watched this show originally, I'd already read and bought into the hype about Dorn going to be appearing on the show. So I knew this. I don't remember if they'd said he was going to be a regular or if he was just going to be appearing in this episode.
Well, with his name in the credits like that, I would assume he was going to be regular right away.
Yeah.
Well, the station is now full of Klingons, and some ominous music is playing, so something is up. Miles in his terrible frizzy hair is hanging out with Julian at Quark's. Quark recognizes that something is up because even though the place is full of Klingons, it's too quiet. They're watching people instead of partying.
Yeah, he's very suspicious of what's going on.
Yeah, and Miles doesn't seem too concerned, but he figures that if something is up, Sisko will figure it out.
I thought it was very Starfleet and the Federation, the way Miles just stands up and says, well, I'll ask the Klingons what they're up to then.
Yeah, I'll go just talk to them.
Yeah.
Well, now we meet General Martok a little bit more up close. This is a big, rugged Klingon dude. He pulls out a giant dagger and he slices his hand to show that he's not a changeling. Sisko and Kira do the same. I'd have asked for a clean knife. I don't know. I thought that was really gross.
Oh, yeah. This is extremely unsanitary.
Yeah. And why are you slicing your hand open? Klingons are so dramatic.
Yes. And he is truly a dramatic Klingon.
And who's going to clean up the blood that he got everywhere? And he smeared it all over the table. It was so gross.
Like I say, this is extremely unsanitary.
Ugh.
And plus, as I pointed out in previous episodes, a smart changeling could potentially keep a store of blood inside them and then push it out when they needed to pretend to be cutting themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure by now they know this is going on.
Yeah.
And so they would be able to prepare for it, yeah.
And they're pretty smart.
Yeah.
They should introduce DNA tests, too.
Yeah, the DNA test might be your only hope. Or maybe they can just start sticking Q-tips up their noses somehow.
I'm thinking on specifically the blood that they bleed.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't work
sense.
if you'd managed to get a sample of the blood of the original person that the changeling was pretending to be.
It wouldn't work?
No, because if they pushed out some blood, you'd be able to tell.
Oh, yeah. So Martok tells us that the Klingon High Council has sent in this task force to fight with their Federation allies against the Dominion. Sisko isn't sure it's necessary, as there hasn't been any signs of Jem'Hadar activity for a while, but Martok says they will come, and when they do, we'll be ready.
Yes, I feel J.G. Hertzler, who plays Martok, definitely studied the source material on how to behave like a Klingon.
Oh, he's quintessential.
Yeah.
Now we go to a holosuite where Kira and Dax are having a spa day. Kira isn't digging it because it's all fake. Dax is trying to get her to relax, but she says she has no imagination, at least not one that lends itself to holosuites. So I'm now supposed to believe that she forgot all about that episode where if she went into the holosuite, Quark would be able to scan her and then use her images. Because now her image is on file. I don't know. This was very uncool. I hate it when they forget things that happened before.
And on top of that, Dax already knows Kira does not like the holosuites. Is Dax just completely missing who Kira is and her background? Like he says, use your imagination. It's like Kira didn't have a normal childhood or any of these things. I feel that Dax is doing that thing that some people do of, oh, you'll enjoy this.
Yeah.
Meaning,
and it's not really for them.
They're the ones that really enjoy it and like doing it. And it doesn't really matter about their friend enjoying it because it's all about them.
Yeah, I guess because there aren't a lot of other activities on the station. And if you're going to try to do something quickly without going down to Bajor, maybe this is the obvious choice is to go to a holosuite, but also maybe they need to be building something out like a climbing wall or
real stuff that they could actually do.
In a cargo bay. Yeah, real stuff that they could do. They could be zip lining across the promenade.
Yeah, I mean, Mars put together the wardroom and the meeting rooms and things. He knocked those up in no time.
Yeah.
Get Mars to do something like that. And plus, Kira is so practical.
Yeah.
This is going to make you laugh. I feel there's an odd parallel here between Kira and Captain Kirk. Remember when he ends up in that anomaly from the movie where your dreams come true? And
in Generations?
Yeah, and he jumps the canyon on the horse and says he's done that multiple times and every time it scared the hell out of him. And when it's not real, he doesn't feel anything.
Yeah.
I see that as a parallel with Kira here of it's fake. It doesn't matter. There's nothing at stake. And it doesn't fit with her practicality.
Yeah, I relate to that. It seems like a lot of nonsense. I think at the same time, if you were able to look at it as if you were reading a book, you could just enjoy it, right? It's just a little bit of fiction that's going on. But that thing, it's just not for her. I don't understand why Dax keeps trying to force it on her.
Right. That's exactly my point.
Out on the promenade, we have lots of Klingons now wandering around and just staring suspiciously at everyone. Garrick and Odo are hanging out in the Replimat. I guess this is them having one of their breakfasts that they talked about last season.
It seems like it, yes.
Odo has figured out how to pretend to eat and drink by making the cup and its contents an extension of himself.
Only mildly a little bit gross, but...
Yeah, it's very strange. They talk about how news from Cardassia has gone quiet. Garrick has heard alarming reports about civil uprisings and civil disobedience. He says the destruction of the Order and the threat of the Dominion have led to some unsettling times on Cardassia. That's an interesting piece of info about the Order. We haven't said that before.
Yeah. And the fact that Garrick genuinely doesn't seem to have a finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Right, because there's no one to contact, or he said it's gone quiet. Then there's a nearby disturbance of Klingons harassing Morn. When Odo steps in, they hurl insults at him, saying they don't take orders from shapeshifters or their Cardassian lapdogs, meaning Garrick. The threatening Klingon says, as long as you wear that Bajoran uniform, we are allies. Make sure you never take it off. I hate to tell him that Odo's not really wearing a uniform, but oh well.
Yeah, he shapeshifted the uniform on, so...
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think this is the smartest Klingon of the bunch, I'm afraid.
No. He's not subtle either. And then in the very next scene, the Klingons ambush Garrick in his shop and beat him up. And then we go to the infirmary, and Julian is patching up Garrick, saying he has some broken ribs and other injuries. And Garrick says, but I got off several cutting remarks. Very Garrick.
Yes. which no doubt did serious damage to their ego.
And that was pretty funny. He's surprised the Klingons attacked him, as Klingons and Cardassians have always had amicable relations. He wonders what that's all about.
Yeah, and the scene closes with Garak saying, maybe they mistook me for someone else. I think he's genuinely surprised by the level of hostility that the Klingons showed towards him.
Definitely surprised.
And I find that also a little bit odd for Garak, that maybe this is just something completely out of his wheelhouse that he couldn't really process.
Well, and he doesn't have anything to go on.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any info from back home about anything going on. He doesn't know that the Klingons are suspicious that the Founders have infiltrated the Cardassians. So, yeah, he doesn't know what's going on.
Oh, so yeah,
it's put him... total lack of info.
Right, it's put him really on the back foot, and he genuinely is surprised by this turn of events. Okay.
And the only thing he knows how to do is then hurl his cutting remarks.
Yeah.
Back in Sisko's office, Kira is talking about the Klingon ships constantly cloaking and decloaking, making it impossible to get an exact count. I feel like the computer could maybe just keep track of their transponder signals or something to count them. That just seems very flimsy.
Yeah, you'd think they could potentially, if they were able to scan the ships when they decloaked, get enough of a reading that you could then keep a log of which ones appeared.
Yeah. She says there's at least 20 of them, but I think there were way more than that.
Yeah.
Then Dax says Cassidy's freighter has sent out a Priority 1 distress signal. She left the station only an hour ago, but now they're under attack. Dax says their signal is now jammed, so Sisko orders everyone to the Defiant. When we get to her freighter, they find a Klingon ship holding them in a tractor beam. When they hail the Klingon ship, Commander Kabok says he has orders to search all vessels leaving Bajoran space for shapeshifters. Each ship will be scanned and the cargo searched, and each crew member subjected to genetic testing, which sounds pretty severe coming from a Klingon.
Yeah.
Kira says the Klingon High Council has no jurisdiction, but he says the Klingons assumed the Bajorans would welcome their help.
I have the feeling that Klingons assume things a lot.
Yeah. Sisko raises shields and powers up phasers, but the Klingons keep hold of the freighter until they fire some warning shots. Eventually, the Klingons release the freighter and leave. Cassidy calls and thanks them. We go back to the station. It looks like the Klingon task force has withdrawn to just outside Bajoran territory in unclaimed space where they can keep causing trouble.
Yes.
And then General Martok comes in and dramatically drops a dagger on the table and leaves. Dax says it's Commander Kabok. He was probably executed for disobeying orders. Sisko is like, great. He says Curzon always said that the only people who can really handle the Klingons are Klingons. And then he tells Dax to get Starfleet Command on the phone.
So Martog had the captain executed. I don't think that's a very good way to motivate your warriors, just to force them to do what they're told. It means they won't think outside the box, they won't take risks, and worst of all, you'll risk losing experienced officers who maybe do something in the spirit of their orders, but not following the letter of the orders, and they get executed. So you lose all your skill sets.
Oh yeah, this is a terrible way to lead.
Yeah.
It's like leadership through attrition or something. It's a terrible idea, but I wonder if maybe they do that because they're considering themselves at war. We don't know that yet, but they think they're at war. I wonder if there's a different way of employing something like this because of that. You know, you need to follow the orders of this task force or of, you know, a fleet or whatever because we're at war.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I still think that you would potentially lose good commanders.
Oh, no, I think it's a terrible idea. Yeah. I'm just saying maybe they've got different rules in effect.
Yeah. Or another way of looking at it is Martog knows what the Federation is like. And certainly his boss, Gowron, knows what the Federation is like. And is maybe the captain was just relieved and sent back to the Klingon homeworld. And they're deliberately playing to the sensibilities of the Federation and saying, I had him executed.
It's possible.
Here's his dagger.
Yeah, maybe.
So the Federation would go, I don't want to be responsible for killing innocent Klingon captains who are just following their orders.
Right.
I could see the Klingons being, and I couldn't use the word devious, but...
dramatic.
Yeah. And playing to what they would see as the weaknesses of the Federation.
Yeah, me too. Well, after Sisko tells Dax to get Starfleet Command on the phone, in the very next scene, we get Lieutenant Commander Worf stepping out of an airlock. It's so weird for me personally to see Worf in something new. It's like lost footage, you know, that I that I never saw of a character that I used to watch. Miles welcomes him on board.
Oh, and did you notice Quark, who was complaining about yet another Klingon on the station, was wearing a different fancy outfit?
Yeah, none of his outfits really stood out for me in this episode. I mean, he's got the one that's pink and the red pants, but it wasn't particularly memorable.
This had like a fake leopard pattern thing on it.
Yeah, he's worn that before, that vest.
Yeah. So this is clearly his high fashion episode.
Yeah, he too is running amok with prints. He's got different prints in all these different blocks all over himself, but that's pretty normal for Quark. So Worf reports to Sisko's office, and he says he's been visiting the Klingon monastery Boreth since the end of the movie Generations. At least that was my take on this conversation.
I don't think he actually said the word movie, but okay.
Well, they talk about losing the Enterprise, which happened in that movie, and now he doesn't really know what to do. He's all adrift.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
He doesn't know his next assignment yet, and he's considering resigning his Starfleet commission. He spent most of his life among humans, and he's not sure he even belongs in the uniform anymore. That's really sad.
Yeah.
So Sisko's like, well, you can help here until you figure out what you want to do with your life. He thinks General Martok isn't telling the whole truth about the task force, and Worf says he'll find some answers. Before Worf leaves, Sisko says he too once thought about quitting Starfleet, and he's glad he didn't. He tells Worf not to make any quick decisions.
Good advice there, just generally.
Yeah, Sisko starts doling out advice to Worf really quickly. I don't know if it's out of desperation for thinking he needs a Klingon or if he recognizes a kindred spirit because he also had these thoughts of leaving Starfleet and then was happy that he didn't. I'm not sure, but he's definitely trying to push his way into Worf's brain.
Yeah, I think it's the second reason. I think it would be because Sisko was in the position of thinking he should maybe resign.
Yeah.
Although, saying that, we do have to move on to a little bit of analysis.
Sure.
I did like this scene in the way that Sisko seems to say to Worf that he doesn't have to take the assignment, that he does need him, but he wouldn't force him to stay. He didn't have to do this. Now, I have a couple of theories here.
Yeah.
The first one, Sisko is genuinely concerned for Worf's well-being. He understands his discomfort of Worf basically being stuck between two races, humans and Klingons, and he has some sympathy for this situation. And he perhaps realizes that if you force Worf into this situation, he will choose to resign and ally himself with the Klingons. So he's being sort of smart, understanding the emotional side of Worf, even though Klingons don't pretend to be terribly emotional. They tend to just have anger, but there's more than just anger there. The other version, and this is my Sisko, he knows exactly what Worf is. He's studied his record. He knows what makes Worf tick. And he is completely playing to Worf's sense of honor of, oh, you don't have to do this. Knowing that Worf being asked to do it, it becomes a matter of honor of, I need to do this because I have been asked to do it. Anything else would be dishonorable to me and my family name and my race and everything. So Sisko is being smart, being that political Sisko, and to an extent, playing Worf because he knows what he's like.
I do think that makes sense because as a leader, you're going to do something like that, right? You know what you're in for. You know what you need to get out of this person. And so you're going to do a little bit of research to prepare yourself for that. And also, as a person who has inherited many employees that I didn't hire, many, very important employees that I didn't hire in various jobs in my career, I found this to be also a very effective technique when you're first getting to know someone, which is, I need you to be happy. If you're not happy in this role, or if there's something that I can do to make you happier, you got to let me know.
Yeah.
And if you're being genuine, and I'm always genuine when I deliver that message, people usually respond pretty well to that, especially if he's at a sort of crossroads in his life. This is really just a human touch thing. I recognize that he's not human, but where you are just saying, hey, you got to make a decision for yourself. I recognize this might not be the right thing for you. I could really use you right now, but, you do what you've got to do. That's a very effective leadership technique, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
But combining it with knowledge, like you said, makes it really effective. So, I agree with what you said.
Okay.
Worf now goes to Quark's and he orders prune juice, which Quark kind of makes fun of until Worf looks at him.
Morn is back at the bar, by the way.
Miles introduces Quark to Julian, and they try to get him to play darts, and he eventually throws the dart so hard it mushes into the board. That was great.
Yes. Rule of darts, number 1. Don't play with Klingons.
Yeah, or tell the Klingon that the goal is not to destroy the dart or the board.
I have defeated the dartboard. It is dead.
That's right. Dax and Kira come out of the holosuite in full Old English costumes, arguing. Apparently, Kira knocked Lancelot out, which irritates Dax. This is an awkward way to meet Worf, but he looks at Kira and says, Nice hat. And then he looks to Dax and says, Curzon's name is an honored one among my people. Sure, the Klingons like a drunken jerk, so that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, totally fitted in. Did you look up what Dax says to him in Klingon?
I did, but I forgot now. I didn't write it down.
Yeah. Well, when they're introduced, she says something in Klingon, and I looked up what it is.
Yeah.
And the consensus seems to be, she replies with, but I'm a lot better looking.
Well, that's true. I never understand in situations like that, why would the universal translator not translate it? Because isn't he speaking Klingon all the time and it's translating?
Oh, that's a good point.
I'm always confused when they do things like that.
Yeah.
But it was made for dramatic effect. So,
he was speaking a different dialect.
Well, Worf excuses himself to deal with a scuffle at the bar. Drex, the Klingon who insulted Odo earlier and then beat up Garrick, is being a jerk, and he gets into a fight with Worf, which Worf wins. Worf starts, by the way, and wins. And Worf takes his dagger and growls at one of Drex's friends.
Yeah, and we learn in this scene that Drex is actually the son of Martog. So even in Klingon society, the kids of the influential heads of family generals are complete jerks.
Yeah, seems on brand.
Yeah.
Dax, by the way, seems impressed from the sidelines of this little fight. Now we're in Worf's quarters, and Worf is unpacking, and he pulls out a picture of his son Alexander, which does not appear to be the same kid from Next Gen, but I guess kids grow up.
Yeah, they do.
Martog comes in search of his son's dagger, which Worf hands to him freely.
Oh, Martog was all ready to fight.
Oh, he was. Worf implies that Martog's kid has no honor, and then he rattles off all the misdeeds of the Klingons we've seen in this episode, which Martog says is all in the best interest of the Alpha Quadrant. Yeah, okay. When Worf asks why they're really here, Martog just says he's there under Chancellor Gowron's orders, and that should be enough for Worf.
Yes, and Martog closes the scene by saying, "Know this, my mission will determine the fate of the Klingon Empire. Interfere and you risk destroying us all."
They're so dramatic.
And then he stomps out. It is the ultimate Klingon dramatic exit.
Yeah.
Well, the whole scene is, I thought, a study in that Klingon drama. It's all posturing. It's all, if you like, scenery chewing. Everything has to be almost larger than life.
Yeah, Martog, everything he says is like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very, very Klingon. And yeah, he's kind of fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. And seeing him play that against Michael Dorn, who has this whole career now of playing a Klingon, it's great to see the two of them interact like that and really sort of embody the Klingonness of that kind of conversation.
What seems to be really important for a Klingon, or at least an actor playing a Klingon, is they have to have a great voice.
Ah, yeah.
And this guy has a great voice.
Yes. Now, quick analysis. Do you think that Worf was deliberately provoking Martog, that he was trying to get him angry or to get a rise out of him and maybe spill the beans on what was going on?
Yes.
And Martog, because there seemed to be a point where Martog is starting to get angry, and then you see him sort of back up when he, I feel, realizes that Worf is trying to provoke this. And and Martog sort of goes, "Oh, I know what you're doing."
Yeah, well, that's a Klingon tactic.
Yeah.
They do it all the time. So, yeah, I think that's exactly what he was doing.
Okay.
Well, now Worf is in a holosuite beating up an alien when Dax enters and offers to spar with him.
I believe he is battling Skeletor.
Yeah, it was definitely Skeletor. He doesn't think it would be a fair match, so of course she says she'll go easy on him, which is very cute. And then they have a little battle, which Worf eventually wins. She asks about Martog, and he says that Martog gave him nothing. Plus, Gowron, Emperor Kahless, and even his own brother aren't giving him anything. Yeah. And then she asks if there's anyone who owes his family a favor. And we jump right to a scene of Worf singing and drinking with an older Klingon.
So this would be the Curzon approach. Find another drunk and get the info from them.
Well, this is a very Klingon approach, too, I think, because they're singing songs and they're drinking blood wine. Yeah.
Yes.
This guy says he owes Worf's father a great debt, and so Worf asks for the real reason that the task force is here. And the guy says it would be wrong to keep a Klingon warrior like Worf away from such a glorious battle, and then he laughs.
Nicely done, Worf.
I really liked in this scene where the old guy's like, "Did I ever tell you about the time your dad saved my life?" And Worf is like, many times. Many dude, times. I know the story.
Yeah. Quick question here. So, Worf seemed pretty unaware of Jadzia's background and understanding of using a bat'leth, Klingon warrior techniques and fighting.
Yeah.
Do you think there's no official record of her activities in Blood Oath?
I think that's a great question, because I gotta believe the one guy who was left standing wrote a song, and that
oh, yeah.
that Dax was in it. Maybe he wrote the song and he included Curzon or something in it. You know what I mean? Made a slight modification to the story.
So there's no official...
But yeah, there's got to be a song about it.
So there's no official Starfleet record, so Worf couldn't have looked it up.
Yeah, I guess I'm sure it's not in a Starfleet record. And I don't know, do Klingons keep those kind of records, or do they just write these songs and that becomes the record?
And how accurate would the songs be?
Yeah, so I don't know, because it seems to mostly be about telling glorious stories of battle. So I would think that there is a story that involves her as part of this battle. But
Dax with a broken arm slaughtered 1,000 of the albino's followers.
Something like that. Yeah, I was surprised, I guess, too. But also I would say that Worf doesn't have a ton of exposure to Trill, because they didn't have a lot of that. I mean, there was only, I think, one on the Enterprise. So I don't know. It's just maybe something he's not familiar with. Maybe he's a little bit like me. He's just going to come to the station and learn about Trill for the first time.
Ah, okay. Yeah, he knows the background theory, but not the details.
Yeah.
Okay.
Worf is now standing on the second floor of the promenade, just people watching, when Odo starts chatting with him. Even though Worf tries to brush him off, Odo has noted that Worf transmitted an average of 5 messages per day to the Klingon homeworld with no response. Then last night he met with the old Klingon dude, and now his investigation seems to have stopped. So Odo assumes that he's figured out what's going on and is putting off telling Sisko.
Odo has been observing Worf.
Yeah, Worf says spying, but no, that's just what he does.
No, it's observing. Yeah. It's what Odo does.
100%. Odo knows that he's irritated Worf, and he says quietly that he understands having to choose between duty and loyalty to your people, which he does understand.
Oh, yeah.
But he reminds Worf that he owes Sisko the truth, so he knows which side Worf is on.
I really like that scene with Odo, because he ends up basically giving Worf advice that Odo's already had to make. It's you pick a side and you stick with it, and you have to do that. And this is another time that Worf has to do this.
Worf and Odo are an interesting pair. Like, you could just picture them sitting together at a table, both of them with their arms crossed, not speaking to each other for hours, and just thinking that was great. But at the same time, I understand Odo's interest in Garrett because, you know, Odo's got that whole grapevine thing that he's really fond of.
Yeah.
To him, it's not really gossip. It's gathering information that he can use.
Right.
Now, he wouldn't get any of that from Worf, but I could see the two of them just staring into space together and thinking that they were having a great time.
We had a great dinner together. I ate. He did not. Neither of us spoke.
Nobody said a word. Exactly.
He is a true friend.
Yeah. Well, Worf does then tell Sisko what he learned. The Klingons intend to invade Cardassia. Since Central Command has been overthrown and power transferred to civilian authorities, Gowron and the High Council believe that the coup was engineered by the Dominion. They're convinced that the civilians couldn't have done it without help. Sisko tells Dax he needs to meet with Martok immediately. He says Worf doesn't have to be there for the chat, but Worf feels like it's his duty.
Oh, very much so. I like that about Worf. If it's like, I'm not going to hide in the shadows. I'm going to take this on the chin. Also, I liked how annoyed Sisko was.
Yeah.
I get this total impression of him just being, how did you jump to that conclusion? You know, how did you go from A to B? What's wrong with you people? I thought he gave that impression really well.
I have to say, Sisko doesn't have a ton of scenes in this episode, but he's really good in all of them. I mean, I really liked his reaction here. He was like, oh my God, what?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah. Martok, Worf, and Sisko are now sitting together, and Martok is implying that Worf has betrayed the Klingons, but Sisko doesn't let him take the bait. Sisko wants the attack called off because there's no evidence that there are founders on Cardassia. But Martok is like, forget it. The Federation has informed Gowron that if the attack happens, it will jeopardize the Federation-Klingon treaty. Martok says he'll consult with Gowron, and he leaves.
Oh, this scene. I mean, when Sisko asks for proof, Martok just says, oh, well, the changing government, that's proof enough. And Worf calls him on it and says, what if you're wrong? And Martok's response is, it would be unfortunate for the Cardassians.
Well, it would be unfortunate for the Cardassians, so he's not wrong.
I feel that's very Klingon again, of if we make a mistake, and let's say we blow up your planet, it's your problem. It's not ours.
Yeah, because they're protecting the Alpha Quadrant. That's what they've convinced themselves of.
Yeah, exactly. it's your fault for making us think we needed to do this.
It is a little suspicious, I guess, that they don't have any real evidence that the founders have infiltrated the Cardassian government, but it's also completely fair to assume that they have, I would have to say, based on things that have happened.
Yeah.
Well, now we're in Ops, and we see that all the Klingon ships are leaving. Martok sent a one-word message to the ships, and that word was begin. They all appear to be heading to Cardassia, and very dramatic music plays into the break. And we're going to consider this the end of part 1.
Yes. That would be a perfect dramatic ending, though, for a season finale.
Agreed. Well, do you have any overanalysis up to this point?
Well, the first point is, and this is slightly jump in topic sideways. So if you notice on the shuttle when Worf arrives, Quark is waiting, and there's another Ferengi. Quark appears to be greeting off the shuttle.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell, was that Rom?
I thought it was Rom, but it happened really fast.
Yeah, I tried pausing it, and I think it might be Rom, but it could be just a generic Ferengi.
Yeah.
So I have a theory here, which is, so Quark strictly follows the very regressive Ferengi rules, breaking which would result in other Ferengis not doing business with him. So is his rationale for that because he employs lots of Ferengi, that there's a lot of Ferengis behind the scene, running the bar, doing all the other general admin stuff, and he can exploit them. They're underpaid. Maybe he doesn't even pay them. Maybe he actually says he's going to pay them and then fires them and doesn't pay them. So he's got this constant flow of young, stupid Ferengi. Because remember, how many of the Ferengi are going to be really bad business people? Well, businessmen in this case. And he's going to be able to rip them off.
Maybe he has a pipeline of interns.
Exactly, that kind of thing. So the only way he actually makes any profit on his business, because he's such a bad businessman, is bringing these Ferengi in and ripping them off. So that's why he's so terrified of losing his Ferengi business license and all the negative impact that has on his life, because he wouldn't be able to make any money other way.
Yeah, that could be. I do imagine that there's a concept of internship or apprenticeship that is unpaid.
Yeah.
And somebody like Quark would take full advantage of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And of the people doing it, yes. So you're saying maybe he was just greeting his latest victim?
Precisely.
Because it does seem strange that he would meet Rom at the gate, you know? But I don't know. Or Rom might be off doing something and he's greeted him to see, did you get that thing done? Or did you get the thing that I asked you to get?
Are you carrying the stolen merchandise I asked you to get?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, next thing.
Yeah.
So people are still playing baseball.
Yes, they are.
I refer back to the number of times in season 1 where I said, why would people stop playing sports? If you remove the money aspect, then it becomes all about how good you can become in the game.
Yeah.
So I think baseball is still alive and well.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be tough to have a league if the planets playing baseball were 8 weeks apart, though.
Wow, that would
maximum
be,
work.
yeah.
But maybe they were all on the same planet or all in the same section.
Yeah, the same section.
Yeah.
Their leagues are based on local planetary systems.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I figured you were making notes about that. It's like, see?
Exactly.
Still happening. And baseball is actually, it's the perfect sort of no stress, high entertainment, just get together and enjoy time with your friends and the people around you.
Yes.
Kind of sport. So it'd be perfect for this.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that. Now, my next point is, I wonder if Worf is having these problems or feeling a little bit lost or what his place is in the world. Because by this point in the storyline and after the movie, where pretty much that House of Duras was destroyed, I think, that now his family name is restored, that his brother is on the High Council, as he said, that he feels that he should go back to the Klingons because all the things that kept him away are gone. Or have they not given us enough really to get an idea of what the problem is?
Yeah, we learn a little bit more about this as we get into the second part of this episode. I mean, so far, they've just hinted that when the Enterprise was lost, he became lost. Yeah. Like he, had a home there and he had been serving there for a long time. And he talks about how he's always been with humans.
Yeah.
And at this point, once his sort of human family of the Enterprise was lost, perhaps that has set him out at sea and he just doesn't know where he belongs. And it's fortuitous that he's been called here to help with something. This might give him a purpose.
Well, on top of that, he would be around the humans because until the family name was cleared, he couldn't, as an adult, really go back to the Klingons because his name was linked with such dishonor.
Yeah. Yeah, that choice was sort of made for him.
Yeah.
But then, there's been a long period of time, though, where he could go back. Yeah. Not back. He was never really there, where he could switch, I guess. Yeah. But he had found, like I said, he had found his family and his comfort on the Enterprise, and he was doing well there. And also, I watched these episodes today to kind of remind myself of Worf's journey on the Enterprise. I haven't watched all of his, but I watched 3 of them. And what you see in those episodes is his great respect and love for Picard. And Picard was a real man of honor. And he acted out of honor. He did some really selfless things to help Worf. Yep. He was a true leader to Worf and an example of something that I think Worf has really clinged to. And once he lost all of that, it must have been really difficult for him to just be like, well, now what do I do? You could go to join the Klingon Empire, I guess, but how would he find somebody that he respected that much? It would just be tough, I think, at that point.
Interesting.
It's tough to lose somebody that you respect so much. And it's not that he lost him, but he lost that family connection.
Yeah. There isn't something to go back to at this point.
Which I have to say is why Worf should be in Picard.
Oh.
Having watched this,
that would be something. Well, maybe he could be in the Fenris Rangers show.
But after watching those 3 Next Gen episodes today, I was like, oh man, I remember why I love this show.
Okay, on to my final point. And in the second part of the episode, we can talk more about Worf. Anyway, final point. Yep. I feel the Federation is doing that thing it does again of sitting on the fence when something terrible is about to happen.
Yeah. They're doing that thing you said where they've sent a strongly worded letter to Gowron. Yep. But also, I don't know, it's so complicated. What could they really do? They have this treaty with the Klingons. They've had peace with them for a very long time. But now they're going rogue and doing something they don't agree with. Are you just going to let that happen? Apparently so.
Well, even almost showing the flag kind of thing of putting Federation ships in between Cardassia and the Klingon fleet. And almost, if you like, forcing their hand on this.
Yeah.
I feel that the Federation is seriously doing that thing again of, we don't really want to get involved.
Yeah, we'll sit back and see what happens.
When it's like, you need to get involved or you're complicit. I understand it for making the drama and the plot, but I feel it undermines some of the idealism of what the Federation should be. But I can understand the risk of another Klingon war. But then the Klingons have got to be looking at it as, if you ended up in a war, you would end up fighting the Cardassians and the Federation. And that would probably not go very well for them.
Yeah, that's probably true, although Cardassia seems to be in a bit of disarray. Yeah. I always think it's so much more complicated than it seems. Yeah. Like, you can't always be on the so-called right side, because what is the right side? Sometimes it's very clear what it is, I guess, but other times it's so much messier than that, and perhaps this is seeming messy. I bet there are people in the Federation who are like, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe there are founders there. What are we going to do about the founders?
Yeah.
And, that would cloud some of the decision-making, I imagine.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because you're going to get those bureaucrats making decisions from paradise again.
Yeah. So they're thinking there could be founders there, so we'll let the Klingons do the cleanup for us.
Possibly, right?
Oh, that's really cynical if they can sit back and say, we're keeping our hands clean and using the Klingons to do our dirty work.
But there's also this thing that we have talked about a few times where they're out in the boonies and there's just nobody else to deploy.
Yeah.
They have the Defiant, but they can't say, oh, Defiant, go and stop 100 Klingon ships. That's not going to help. So sometimes, too, I think they're trusting in the other members of the Federation to not do something like this. Yeah. Because they can't police everything. That's impossible.
Yeah, you can't be everywhere all the time with the entire fleet.
Yeah. Exactly. So really, if you think about it that way, what options did they have except to say, don't do that?
Yeah. We'll bar the Klingon ambassador from the buffet at Federation headquarters.
Right. We'll expel him.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Okay, that's a very good point.
Anything else?
And I think my final point.
Yep.
I think it shows how fragile Cardassian society actually was. If with the removal of the Order, central command basically collapses immediately. I think it demonstrates that the Order was really forcing Cardassian society into a particular direction or mold or way of acting. Remove that and boom, revolution.
It certainly does imply that they were teetering right on this for a long time. Yeah.
And I think that kind of ties to my points earlier about how there's a view, this idealistic view of what Cardassian society is like and how it actually is and everything's perfect and there's always justice, etc. And the reality of it, which is it's all fake. It's all bluster.
Well, the ones who benefit from it think it's great.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with women in the Ferengi world, right? I mean, remember that whole scene with Quark telling somebody that marriage is great in Ferengi?
Yeah.
There's just marital bliss all the time. It's like, oh, sure, from your point of view.
Right.
But did you ask the other half? I bet they wouldn't say the same thing if they felt they could speak freely. But guess what? They can't. So I think that the same thing is probably true here, not that distinction between male and female, but that distinction between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, the people who are running Cardassian society and the Order and the actual people who have to live at the other end of it.
Right. The rebels that we met in Profit and Loss. Yeah.
Okay, that wraps up my analysis for this episode. What have you got?
I have one word written in my over-analysis section.
Oh.
Worf. It's hard to explain how peculiar it is to me that Worf is now just dropped into this show that is 30 years old that I haven't watched. I don't know. It's just really peculiar. But he adds a very different dynamic. This is a much darker episode, I think, than what we have been, watching for the last couple of seasons here. And it's very serious and it brings a bunch of history.
There is very much a change with the show at this point.
Yeah. I don't even know what word I'm trying to say. It's not like when you just add a new character.
Yeah.
Like sometimes a show will all of a sudden add a kid. It's not like that. You've actually picked up an entire history, right? You've picked up a character that's got this huge history and you've just dropped it in. And it really is likely to change the entire dynamic of the show.
Oh, yeah.
So I found that pretty interesting. And he immediately brought that sort of glowering thing that he does, the sitting and staring, which, like I said, is a thing he could do with Odo, and they could quite enjoy that together. But it was just interesting to me, I guess, what a change it feels like to add Worf to this show. So yeah, that was my one word analysis.
Oh, well, you know what my opinion on that was? I enjoyed the show to this point. I thought that bringing Worf in was an absolute multiplier.
Well, that remains to be seen, I guess, how I'll feel about it.
And I think as well, maybe part of my perspective on the show had changed by this point because you'd really introduced me to TNG by this point. I'd watched some of TNG, but I had not watched a lot of it. And I'm pretty sure by this point in the show, you'd shown me pretty much every episode of TNG.
Probably true, because they used to air at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Every night. Yeah, so we probably got through the whole thing.
Yeah, and we used to rent the tapes. We used to rent the VHS for it as well.
Did we? I don't even remember
Yes, we did. And
well, that's
good. You showed me all of your favorite episodes. So I think by this point, I'd probably caught up with all of TNG as well.
Gosh, no wonder you married me. I mean, come on.
Oh, come on. Yeah, I knew you were a keeper.
What a catch I am. This is my wife. She introduced me to Star Trek. Well, Star Trek Next Generation.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's funny. Well, let me just talk about women in the future. I also only have a couple of little tiny things written in here because there's not a lot to talk about, at least in this first half here. There's not a lot of women, except for the silly stuff in the holosuites that really kind of offered nothing. It taught me nothing about either character. It didn't advance anything with them. And I actually thought that it went a little bit backwards because I believe Kira would avoid going into the holosuites after that thing where the guy essentially tried to steal an image of her and take it home with him to do whatever gross things he wanted to do. And Quark kept trying to get her image or get her into the holosuite because that would then put her into the computer.
Yeah.
So she's essentially now allowed her identity to be stolen. And I don't think she would do that just because of that one episode.
Right.
So I found that very frustrating.
Did you think Dax was being a bit jerky?
I thought Dax was being very Dax.
Mm-hmm.
She is convinced that this is the way to have fun. And a lot of people do that. They're convinced of a thing that's fun and they try to drag you into it. But really, you ought to give up at some point, especially when the person keeps saying no. But yeah, she seems quite convinced that she would enjoy herself. I just don't think she would. I don't think she would have ever gone in there unless she had gotten, I guess, seriously bored. But I don't buy it.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
And I guess the other thing is the things that they were doing in there. I mean, is that really what Kira would want to do? Or would she want to do something that was maybe a little bit more adventurous? Does she really want to go back in time and act out scenes with Lancelot? No, that doesn't make any sense. Kira is way too pragmatic for that.
Yeah, I would see Kira whitewater canoeing with Miles.
That would make way more sense. Yes, that I would tend to believe, although I don't believe she would go in there at all. But if she was going to go in there, I think that's the kind of thing she would be interested in, something more adventurous like that it's not about pretending, it's about doing.
Oh, and I think she'd do the Miles thing. She'd go in with the safety protocols off. If you were going to dislocate your shoulder,
yeah,
she would do it.
That's probably true. All right, well, do you want to give a rating to this episode so far? We've still got half the episode to go, but should we at least rate it up till this point?
Yes, I think we should give it a halfway rating.
So up to this point, thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral?
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I give it a thumbs up too. It's very entertaining.
Yeah.
So far, so good. I mean, we've watched the whole thing at this point, but still, yeah, up until this point, I think it's very good. And it's definitely drawn me in. It's got a whole different feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for the rest of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of Season 4, Episode 1, Part 1. Come back next week for Part 2. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. You can go to talkthroughmedia.com and leave feedback there for individual episodes. And also, you can listen to the other podcasts in our network. Like, for example, right now, we have a Star Trek Lower Decks podcast going on, so please give that a listen. Otherwise, you can also catch us on Instagram at Rebingeit.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.